usually when people think about career conversations, they think I'm as a leader or a manager. When I go into a career conversation, I need to know everything. I need to know all the roles that exist today, and I need to know what's good and what's the next career move for my team member or my employee. And I'm going to say something which is going to say, if you're going to approach it with this mindset, then you are going to fail, right? Please know, in the day and age that we are in, we cannot have all the answers, and we don't have all the answers. We don't know what alternate career paths exist. We also don't know what career move is going to be the right career move, right? For sure. And it's not about my career. It's about the individual's career. So approaching it with that humility that I don't know everything that Priya is asking me, but I'm going to facilitate this discussion, ask the right questions, tap into her passion, her interest, her values, get her to understand her next role needs to be able to provide for all of this, right? What she cares about, what matters the most to her.
Okay. So welcome, Priya. Really happy to have you on the show. We are here with My Working Title podcast, where we inspire and empower people to actively design our careers. So welcome, Priya.
Thank you. Thanks, Jill. I'm very excited to be here, and also a bit nervous. I've never done a podcast before, to be honest. I have listened to a few, and I think all of these presenters do such a fabulous job. I've been facilitating for a fairly long time, but I don't know why I'm nervous today when it's about a podcast. Maybe just the experience of it, I guess.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm nervous too. This is our first season, so I had to learn along the way and made all kinds of different mistakes to get better. So we are all on this experimental journey together. Yeah.
Sure. So we learn together.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so I just want to introduce you to the audience. So Priya is a learning and HR organization design development professional over 25 years. So she's covered industries and organizations across tech, consulting that includes LinkedIn, GIC, and many more. So her heart is to foster learning culture. And she herself always learns, and she is a yoga teacher. She's a strengths coach. She does career coaching, and I don't know what else she does. And she makes things fun, and we've been working together for years, and it's really a client turned friend, and really, really glad to have you on the show, Priya.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I don't know if I really deserve that introduction, but yeah, I've been in the learning space for such a long time. It feels like ages now. And it continues to inspire me, to be honest. It continues to push me in ways that I never imagined. As a learning practitioner, you feel like you kind of get it. But I think the journey has been always a revelation. Let's put it this way. And that's what keeps me going in the learning space. Yeah.
So, Priya, just let's kickstart the conversation also in the curiosity that I have about your own journey, right? So as HR people, we help people manage their careers or, give advice and all that. So I just wanted to also spotlight your own journey, your own career management journey. Do you have any stories, any interesting anecdotes to share with us?
Yeah. So if I go back in my career as well, right, and I reflect on my journey so far, I somehow stumbled into corporate learning. And then when I got the opportunity to do a bit more of corporate learning, I decided to segue into consulting, and this was not with the big fives, but more on the learning consulting, leadership consulting, that space. And that gave me a lot of experience to really start to hone my corporate learning experience as well, because in consulting, you get to experience the breadth. And then when I switched over to corporate learning and started to go into the depth, It gave me a different kind of a challenge. There's one particular experience that I do want to highlight, which was sort of my more formal, if I can use that word, or a structured career conversation. So I was 6 months into my role, and I see an invite that comes from my manager to have a career discussion. And I was like, why do I need to think about my career when I'm just 6 months into the role? Anyways, I went to into the conversation, and just in 10 minutes, my manager and I concluded that I was clearly not prepared for the discussion, right? And the reason for that was that she started to ask me some open-ended questions. Where do you see your career? What do you think you're doing well, or your strengths are? Now, some of the generic questions I could answer, and which was more around my strengths and what's my passion when it comes to learning, etc. But really, the questions around what kind of role do I want to see myself in, right? Or questions around where I see my career maybe 5 to 10 years from now. I hadn't thought of it because I was just so caught up thinking about how do I create success for my role within the first 6 months, right? Which she was any which ways helping me do. And those conversations were different than a career conversation. And I was clearly missing the way that I need to think about it. So she said, here's what she said. She says, I'm going to give you an assignment. And that assignment is, and she was very serious about it, by the way. And she said, the assignment is that you need to go and look for roles that exist today or that are published today, that are open, vacancies in the learning space or outside of the learning space, whatever, and come back and tell me what is that one role today that if you were given an opportunity, you would want to do, and why, right? So take your time. Whenever you're ready, you set up a meeting. And that's how my career conversation with my manager started, right? And it gave me a lot of understanding of two things, primarily. And I wouldn't here sit and talk about clarity in terms of figuring out what you want to do with your career. We're all in different stages of our career. And some of us, many a times, are not so sure of where we want to go, 2 to 3 years from now, or maybe even in the next 18 months. And it's all right. And some of us are perhaps very clear. We're crystal clear. This is what we want to do. This is what we want to hear. It is the end goal for our journey in a way, so to speak. I don't know if that's true. If there's ever an end goal, the bar keeps going up and up. But really, I think the point I'm making is it gave me a lot of insights into what kind of a career conversation will really benefit me, right? And how I should be driving that discussion rather than being at the receiving end. I need to take accountability. And then that became also very clear what is the role of my manager. So when I went back, and I had actually identified two roles anywhere in the world, any industry, and I had to justify to her why I think those roles were exciting to me and how she and I can together, perhaps, make that happen to a large extent within my current role. Right. And maybe even in the future as well. So the conversations became a lot structured, a lot about accountability towards what I need to bring to the table when it's about my own career. How should I be thinking about it? And also her role in facilitating and coaching me along the way.
Nice. So just curious, how long did it take for you to get back to her after she asked you?
Okay, I think that took about a month. Yeah. I was really surprised with that discussion. I thought this was another check-in and just she just happened to mention a career conversation. I had no idea what to expect.
Just wanted to expand on that because when we consult for clients, typically sometimes there's a bit of confusion between performance review conversations with career conversations, right? So
That's
in
right.
your expertise and your 25 years, could you also enlighten us and share with us what's the difference between a performance review conversation and a career conversation?
Yeah. I feel like we still get trapped into it, right? In terms of um, where we say we are doing a career conversation, but it ends up in a performance conversation, and it really happens. Yeah. And people don't know when I'm getting career coaching versus when I'm not getting career coaching, when I'm just getting feedback. So I think we are still working in at least from the corporate experience that I have so far, we are still working through um, how do we keep the two, exclusive. Now, having said that, I do also believe that some of these lines are very thin, right? And somewhere they come together in a way. So the point, so for example, let's say, I'm having a discussion and I'm talking about my career 18 months from now, 2 years from now. And there has to be a conversation which will come to, okay, you've articulated what you want, where you want to go and what skills you want to, develop to get there. And maybe you're talking about a role, maybe you don't know whether a role exists, but you're just talking from a skill standpoint, right? But then it'll always come back to where are you today? In a way, think about it, right? So that you can work towards a plan, isn't it? And sometimes when that conversation starts from or goes into where are you today, it somewhere touches upon your current skills, the gaps, the what you could do differently or what more can be done, et cetera, et cetera. So somewhere it does have those walls, like I said, are very thin. But now it's really about understanding where it's getting too much into performance, right? And current performance. And you've got to really take a step back as a manager and not fall trapped to it. But really, in the real context, I do believe that it will somewhere converge. And it's okay for it to converge to some extent. But you also need to not let it get too diluted,
Mm.
if I'm making sense.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is also being aware that if you're going into a career conversation, it should gear more towards the future, I suppose, right? And of course, there will be times you might muddle back to the present, which is normal because the future is always dependent on not always, sometimes it depends on the present, right? But also be conscious and aware that it is not really the present for now. This conversation is more the future.
Yeah. And I think one another sort of reflection that I have on this is if you start using the skills language, then it starts to become easier rather than a role. Because if you really ask me today, we have talked about we are in the future of work, and in all of this, in the larger scheme of things, it's very hard to know what roles will be available 3 to 5 years from now, right? Unless your career aspiration is very linear in some ways, let's put it this way, right? And you know that role will exist 3 years from now or 5 years from now, and that's what you're after. So I think sometimes using the skills language also can help to focus on the future orientation, and then talk about transferable skills from your current, presently as well.
I was just going to ask you to elaborate on the skills language and things like transferable skills. We've heard a lot from Skills Future, and different people have different experiences, right? So sometimes it's if I get all these new skills means I will get a new job. Or some people are like, my skills are pretty good, but and they're transferable, but why can't I seem to shift to different things? So there are a lot of different nuances to the skills language. So I thought I wanted to hear from you that you are a learning expert, building learning cultures. How would you define it and how do you see it being applied?
So I would say, starting off, it's a good idea to do this exercise, often. When I say often, I mean once in 6 months. Firstly, know what skills do you have, and where are you vis-a-vis those skills today? And then also so it's like a skills inventory that you do for yourself, right? So for example, I've got project management skills, and I've got communication skills, I've got facilitation skills, negotiation skills, etc., etc. So you kind of do like an inventory, both from a functional, technical standpoint, maybe even from a managerial standpoint as well. And from there, then you start to assess, or rather highlight, which are these that are transferable skills, right? And mostly at a baseline, um, all my future roles will expect that. So, for example, I can definitely say in my context, as long as I'm in HR, right? Forget just learning, but as long as I'm in HR, I could be in talent management side, I could be in the operations, HR operations. I'll definitely need effective communication skills. Empathy, right, as a skill will always help me. And if I have managerial skills, then definitely that, right? Team management skills, for example. Now, those are all transferable, isn't it? So I start to then highlight which are the transferable skills for potential roles that I may be aspiring for, whether it is within the HR community, getting out of the learning space, but in the other, HR functions, or it could just be, hey, I want to go into customer success, care side. So then I start to look at, ask myself, what are the new skills that I would need? Let's say if I'm pursuing a career in customer success, and are there any transferable skills from what I've highlighted in my current skills inventory that I can bring to the role? Yeah. So I would say it's really that, and every one of us at any given point of time should also be um, getting feedback on our skills, right? And continue to do the skill gap analysis from time to time. And the more senior one gets, the lesser and lesser we get the feedback, unless, it is something that it's enforced in the organization where you're going through a 360 or something.
Yeah, so following up on that, thanks for explaining skills inventory, and you're right about the feedback, right? So it is also, I think what we find about skills that's tricky is that skills, we know the different types of skills, but in terms of the competency of the skills, whether you're basic, whether you're intermediate, and the bar, like you said, just keeps getting higher or it changes, right? And how do we peg ourselves to what's competitive standard? And even getting feedback, are there any tips or tricks to how to get feedback from people, especially if you're senior?
I think, okay, so there are two, 3 ways, and I prefer the first option that I'm going to talk about, where you really reach out one on one to your key stakeholders and you say, "I'd like to get some feedback on the last 6 months. We've been working together on XYZ, and I'd just like to get some feedback on what are some of my strengths and what could I have done differently, if at all." Yeah. And I think that's a good place to start. And that face-to-face interaction can open up a lot more of other conversations related that you may want to delve into. So you could talk about specific skills related to particular programs or projects or initiatives that you've collectively, worked on together. So that's one approach. The other approach is where you write emails, right? And you do the same, but through an email communication. I feel like there's so much, there's so, how do I say? There's not a lot in there which can be discussed and addressed, right, collectively. So because feedback should be a two-way communication and not a one-way. So, and emails become a one-way, and that's just about it, right? But if one is not comfortable, then I guess that's the only option, right? Or that should be one of the other options. So that's the second option. And I think third should be, I know organizations have that in as part of their HR system, where they, have a way that individuals can reach out to their stakeholders and just ask for feedback, and everything is then documented. And then all of that then can be something that they can include as part of their self-assessment, which is the first step in performance conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. I think I agree you like the best is context, having the feedback and discussing that. Because sometimes you may agree, some may not agree, or you see things in different shades of gray, and that could be a good conversation. Yeah, and also it's also very scary to ask for feedback sometimes, right? Especially if you feel
It is.
like
It
I don't
is.
know, your self esteem
Yeah.
is on the
Yeah.
line.
Yeah. So, Jill, I'll just say that, actually you brought up a good point and I missed saying something. I think one should not be forced to get feedback from everyone, right? But okay, let's put it this way, right? There are obviously individuals or stakeholders that we work with, and even outside of work as well, who we trust and we value their guidance and we value their input. So I would say start from there, so that it becomes something that you want to understand about yourself better, right? And then slowly one will be comfortable with unsolicited feedback, right? So the example that I'm taking in terms of how to approach is more the solicited feedback, that I'm reaching out because I want to solicit someone's feedback because I value what they think about me.
Yeah, so it's also managing your own expectations. Yeah, so about also having the whole sense of getting a sense of confidence, getting a sense of like a baseline. Okay, I'm not too bad, right? And then maybe getting a little bit more expansion of that to say, hey, that's good, but it can be better, or that's something a weakness or a blind spot that we all need to work on. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, someone once told me, right, and this is going back slightly earlier days in my career, where when one would get unsolicited feedback, and if it's coming out a bit harsh, you would feel terrible about it. So it was one of those, and I started to feel really terrible about it. And that's when someone came to me and said, I still remember another peer of mine and said, usually there is a 2% truth in any feedback that you get. If you don't want to accept any of it, just see if there is any 2% truth in that. Somewhere or the other, you will find that 2% truth. And that's what you take from it, and the rest you let it go.
Yeah, that's very wise. Yeah. So there's always a spectrum and also how open we are to it, or also perspectives. And it's typically not like 2 cm is 2 cm, but it could vary. Yeah. And also in context.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So coming to that, I suppose I've been hearing and sharing and discussing with other folks about how in moving forward as leaders or business leaders, HR leaders, there is a strong need to be clued into career development and career conversations, because definitely the Gen Zs are asking for it. The also the different groups in the whole workforce are also finding things that are changing and challenging. So apparently the legitimate age of working has just been extended again. So there's going to be a lot of intergenerational challenges and conversations. So how might a leader, business leader, HR leader, manager equip themselves to be able to give or conduct, run a good career conversation, right? So if you could give terrible feedback or you could give feedback in a terrible way, uh, which may not help. So just want to tap on your expertise, consult you. How can a leader today, conduct a great career conversation?
Yeah. I'm going to say something which can be quite controversial, right? Um, uh, Usually when people think about career conversations, they think I'm as a leader or a manager. When I go into a career conversation, I need to know everything. I need to know all the roles that exist today, and I need to know what's good and what's the next career move for my team member or my employee. And I'm going to say something which is going to say, if you're going to approach it with this mindset, then you're not, then you are going to fail, right? Please know, in the day and age that we are in, we cannot have all the answers, and we don't have all the answers. We don't know what alternate career paths exist. We also don't know what career move is going to be the right career move, right? For sure. And it's not about my career. It's about the individual's career. So approaching it with that humility that I don't know everything that Priya is asking me, but I'm going to facilitate this discussion, ask the right questions, tap into her passion, her interest, her values, get her to understand her next role needs to be able to provide for all of this, right? What she cares about, what matters the most to her. Now, also the other reality is, which wasn't so challenging 10 years from now, I guess, right? And before, when we started our careers, the career journeys for most people used to be quite linear, right? Quite straightforward. I know this role is going to stay, be there and continue to be there. Now, we really don't know what roles will exist 10 years from now. It's like me career coaching my 9-year-old and telling her, right, that I know for a fact when she enters the workforce, firstly, I don't even know whether she will be a corporate worker or not, right? But let's say I'm assuming she is. And how would I know what roles will exist, from now till the time that she is 21, 22 years old to get into the workforce, isn't it? So it's a lot around that, and so asking powerful questions, a lot of open-ended questions, a lot of understanding of personal motivation, drivers, like I said, passion, interest, purpose, so important in this, right? How does my career today align with my purpose, where I want it to go? And that's when you're opening someone's mind to consider alternate career paths. Educate them about skills. If they're not thinking about their skills today, educate them about transferable skills, isn't it? Educate them about skills that are um, going to be important for them, regardless of the role that they get into. Like, a lot of people come to me and say critical thinking, regardless of which role I'm in, so important. Absolutely, right? Then another one that was just coming to me was stakeholder management, right? Regardless of what role I'm in, I'll have multiple stakeholders to work with. Yeah, growth mindset. So what are they doing about developing those skills, right? And how are they thinking about how to apply those skills in different roles? And I have always been interested in people's careers when it is a lot of diversification there, right? Where challenged themselves, where they have taken some of those intelligent risks, I would say, um, and really given, went along with the trust and the belief in themselves and taken that leap of faith. Because really, we are in, I wouldn't say we are venturing in, we are already in times where we need to start taking a lot of leap of faith if we are already not doing it.
Yeah, so Priya, thank you so much for sharing about how to conduct a career conversation. So it's not going in with a know-it-all, but it's also going in with a coaching mindset and facilitative mindset about helping people connect the dots and moving forward. So that's also a skill set I suppose many people need to pick up. It's not natural to quite a few people. I suppose most people are quite used to being directive, but flipping the role of being open and consultative is also a new skill.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely say that, every industry is getting also disrupted. So one can open the mind towards looking at similar roles, but in different industries, right? Now, that's where perhaps a coach's value can be, that you could, through your questioning and through your, conversation, you are getting them to think differently about how they started the conversation. So, for example, let's say I come to you and I say, I am an associate vice president of learning, right? And I want to be the VP for learning, right? That's too linear. And then you start the discussion around, okay, so why do you want that role? Or, what about that role excites you? And where do you think, it ties into your purpose, et cetera, everything that I just mentioned. And imagine that you open my mind towards considering or thinking about my career, not from a title perspective, but actually the impact perspective, because from a purpose standpoint, that's what matters to me. And I might take up a role in an NGO as the head of HR, for example.
Yeah, that's great about seeing different aspects and different possibilities. So one of the interesting things when I consult with clients around careers, right? They're like, "What if people will leave?" right? And we're like, if they wanted to leave, they would have left. But I suppose there is also exploring options that easily could include external options, right? But I also know that you've done work around options internally. So just wondering how different organizations have approached the whole looking for purpose, maybe different roles and different projects, whatever, but within the organization for internal mobility and retention. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one, right? Because, like you said, we as managers and leaders have the hoarding mentality, don't want to risk losing a talent, risk losing an employee. But the reality is, they will go if they have to. Yeah. Think the way I started to see this is, and I learned it from one of my organizations that I was part of. Um, as long as they leave us being a better version than when they came in, and that's a big achievement for the leader, for the manager, and for the organization as well. And we need to celebrate that. So I think that kind of mindset is really important. Because then you'll be open to either facilitating an internal mobility discussion or an external mobility discussion. And more managers will can get comfortable, or leaders will get comfortable coming to the table to have a career discussion, right? I think the two reasons we just discussed that they don't want to have it is every time I go into a career conversation, it becomes a performance discussion or a feedback, right? And secondly, I just don't want to lose the talent, so rather not talk about it, right? I feel like if I don't talk about it, then my employee is not thinking about it. Guess what? They're already thinking about their careers. They're actively thinking about their careers, right? And they're wanting to do something about it. So that's the reality. We all are, right? And we are. If we are not, then we are just being at the receiving end, to be honest. So that's the first thing. I mean, coming back to your question on internal mobility, I think there has to be that mindset that shifts, with leaders, with managers. Employees need to feel comfortable with their managers having this discussion and talking about it. I think the second thing should be that it needs to be a lot more transparent, saying that if I'm, you're my manager and I'm looking for an internal role, I come to you in a very transparent, honest way, and I say, I'm looking for opportunities internally, and I'd like to explore XYZ role. And the hope that I have from you is that you will be my champion, yeah, to support me in me pursuing this, and you'll have my back, rather than trying to stop me, or rather than trying to dissuade me that that's not the right role for me, etc., etc. So I think internal mobility needs to, like I said, be a very integral part of everything that we do in HR. The policies need to facilitate and foster internal mobility. And more importantly, the mindsets have to shift as well. I think the easiest part is how to have a career conversation. Once you overcome that mindset, the skill part of it is the most straightforward one. Yeah. And if you don't do that, you're not fostering a culture for organizations that are not thinking about internal mobility. You're not fostering a culture of growth. And when one doesn't foster a culture of growth in the organization, then you risk losing talent very quickly. Then you risk losing your employer branding very quickly. Then you risk losing um, talents, right? And definitely the engagement scores drop over a period of time.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's what we hear across the board. So as you were sharing, I was curious about a couple of things. So you talked about having that mindset to be comfortable, and also not fear it. So how can a company foster that kind of safety and fearlessness in approaching career conversations?
You got to start somewhere. And I sometimes feel like starting from a place of shifting the mindset and building the skills is a good place to start, right? And that's probably where you want to start. Then I think the other is that you need a few internal sort of career coaches. That's my thought. I'm not saying external career coaches are not helpful, but I think internal for internal mobility, they know sort of the internal ecosystem. You know, they are probably more aware of certain roles, especially for a large enterprise where there are a few organizations part of the bigger enterprise, um, and there is internal mobility program across within the different companies. So I feel like having internal coaches could be very helpful. They know the culture really well. They understand the different sort of businesses. They understand which business is growing. What are some of the? They can also speak the same. They can help to contextualize a little bit more around, what to expect in this role, how to build your network or your profile in such a way that you're able to position yourself for that role, et cetera, et cetera. So some of those things can be very helpful. And I think the other one is managers having regular conversations. Okay, now I know your question was about safety, right? If I don't have the conversation, or if I don't put myself out there as a leader or a manager to drive that conversation, it, I will never know whether I am okay at it, I suck at it, or I am pretty decent at it, right? So, and really the safety will come when there is trust. And I'm hoping that we don't have to go down the path of building trust, because we are doing that and we need to be doing that as managers any which ways, even for a performance conversation, even when I'm giving a tough feedback, right? I need to approach it from a place of trust. So the same sort of behaviors apply in a career conversation. If you don't put yourself out there as a manager or a leader, don't. And like I said, the thing that holds us back, right, is not that we don't trust us, trust the relationship. I think it's also the assumption that we go in with, that I need to have all the answers. And what happens if that career conversation is not the most effective career conversation? You have another career conversation, and you have another career conversation, and somewhere you'll get it. Yeah. But if you stop after having one or two and you feel like, no, 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 that's not me, then I think you're giving up too soon, I feel. The career conversations in today's context are not going to be easy. I have to put it out there. Like in my how do I say, last 10 years, the career conversations have become more complex. Before that, like I said, informally a career conversation would be so straightforward. It's a very linear pathway. We are only thinking about a linear pathway. We're not thinking about anything else. You don't hear a lot around transferable skills. You're not hearing a lot around people taking risks, and going into different kind of roles, that they've never done before. So, but now you hear so much more about it. So the complexity of career coaching I would say, is a lot complex. The other reality also, let's look at the other side of it, right? Um, the That's the downside. The complexity is increased. The upside of that is you don't need to have all the answers.
That's true.
Yeah, you're going into a conversation and you're just having fun in that conversation and ensuring that the person you are facilitating this conversation, for it goes away with a lot more for them to deliberate, to think, to reflect. And the more confusion that you create, the better it is, in a way, right? For a lack of a better word, because you're getting them to think and to understand and to assimilate all of this, right? And to say, okay, I don't want to try this rule, but maybe I want to look at it this way, right? Let me give this a thought. So you're making them think, and that's where the growth happens.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So, what I'm hearing is that career conversations have gotten more complex. They can be difficult, and at the same time, super necessary. And at the same time, it could be fun, right? It could be like, hey, I don't have an answer. That's great. I just ask questions so that you find your own answers. Something like that. In our work, and we try to make it fun, and we also came across this book by Jolie Winker called "Help People Grow." If not, you'll see them go. We thought it's one of the best books around in career conversations. We'll link it in the show notes so that more people can access that. And hopefully, career conversations won't be that scary. Definitely agree with you, it's gotten more complex. I know, Priya, we could talk on forever like we normally do. But I just also wanted to honor your time and also close off this session. Just wondering whether you have any last burning thoughts or advice or things you want to share. We've covered quite a lot of things today. You've educated us on career conversations, skill languages, the culture of growth, career conversations, how it can be fun, not just complex and scary. Yeah.
I would say two things, yeah. If you're a manager or a leader, don't shy away from career conversations. Given, what I've just shared, if one thing that you want to remember from this podcast, it should be you don't need to have all the answers. Yeah. So go in with that mindset and go in with the open mindset. And like you said, everyone's already thinking about their career. So regardless of whether you have that career conversation with them or not, they are going to do something about their careers. Yeah. The second is, or rather tied to that, is that there's a lot of research that points to that if we give opportunity for career conversations or space for career conversations, and help facilitate careers for employees, which is a culture of growth, if I can put it this way. It fosters engagement, it fosters stickiness to the organization, and it definitely will also lead to people doing meaningful work, right? Now, if you're an employee and you're listening to this podcast, just know that you and only you are accountable for your career and nobody else. So you are in the driver's seat and don't leave it to the organization or your manager to decide your career journey. So that's all I have to say.
Well, thanks, Priya. That was awesome. It was always fun talking to you. And thank you for sharing so much of your depth and giving your gift of knowledge to all of us. So see you around. I'm really glad that we could meet and we'll catch up again.
Hey, thank you.